One of the best seasons in Tennessee football history comes to a close as the Vols lose in the college football playoffs 42-17. Coming up on the program today with Caleb Calhoun, I'm Dave Hooker. We'll have takeaways, report card, torchbearers, blame pie, turning point in the game, and more. But Caleb, you saw a Tennessee team. I want to remind everybody, last look brought to you by Doctors Campbell, Cunningham, Taylor, and Hahn. Look at me, no contacts, no glasses. I had LASIK by local doctors like Doctors Campbell, Cunningham, Taylor, and Hahn. Caleb, you look at this game, and with the preamble that we had leading up to it, because both of us thought that Tennessee would beat Ohio State in a close game, turned out to be pretty one-sided, the Buckeyes' favor. And kudos to them for battling back from a tough Michigan loss. I know that's difficult, even though you've got an elimination game to play for and a national championship. But anyway, the Michigan game is just so special. But they managed to bounce back, so kudos to them.
Yeah, I mean, they deserve a ton of credit for this. And also, I mean, not just what happened with the Michigan game, but all the talk with Ryan Day. And then you show up in Columbus and you see that Vol fans have taken over your home stadium. Which, I mean, that I didn't think that was a real thing. Turned out to be a real thing. Like, it was fully legit. And
yeah, I spoke to Jimmy Himes, who was there. He said it looked like there was about 25,000 or so people there, and he's really good at guesstimating those numbers. I thought it was an impressive showing by Tennessee's fan base. I'm not surprised. I'd be interested to see what type of fan base would have made it to the Rose Bowl, because that's another major trip that you would just have 10 days to plan on, which from a jet line perspective isn't the ideal thing. Go ahead and hit the like and subscribe button now. Let's get a poll question set on board now. Do we want to play the blame game with our poll question, Caleb, or do you want to go in a different direction?
Let's start with this, because we'll talk a little bit of fun for a minute. But Tennessee season is a success or a disappointment?
I want more qualifiers in there. I want massive success, successful, disappointment, incredibly disappointing. Because I'm going massive success. I think you win 10 games with a first-year starter at quarterback. It's massive success. I don't care where your program is. I don't care if it was Kirby Smart's taking over Georgia's program the first year at Georgia. I don't care if it was Larry Coker taking over Miami's program with the Hurricanes. He knew to go with Ken Dorsey. They're just, to me, seems like there are some natural positions that you can make the right decision in terms of personnel when you're at a Tennessee sort of level. In other words, you look at the receivers, and I don't give Tennessee a lot of credit for losing the receivers because they supposedly had 5 at the beginning of the year. And what did we see? Mike Matthews was still out there not ready to play. So I don't want it to sound like I'm ripping the season, but I don't think this was the best effort of all time.
No. I mean, it was. I guess you're right. You could say it was a success, right? Not a massive success.
I would actually say the season was a massive success. This, to me, was a disappointment or maybe even a failure.
Really?
You can't show up there in a playoff game and get down 21 points. I don't care what sport you're playing in. I don't care if it's baseball. You can't get down 7 runs in Game 7. You can't get down 21. There's just you just can't put yourself in a lot of those positions. And listen, I think I'm curious because you mentioned the talent already. I think this is more of a coaching thing. I think that Ohio State's coaching staff had a really good day, and they beat Tennessee in a lot of different ways. But I do think the talent, I think I'm going to adjust my tiers. Last week I said I thought there were 4 teams on the number 1 tier that could very well win a championship. And then I said should. And then I had another tier that said could and another tier that said won't, like the Indianas of the world. So I had Tennessee on that should win top of tier. As I readdress that, they should be on the could, right?
Yeah, they should. But we're going to get to the coaching because I got to give Ohio State's coaching staff a great credit too. I mean, they threw something at. I mean, we hear this a lot, but man, they threw stuff out there, Tennessee, that I don't think Tennessee had seen all year from Ohio State, and they were not prepared for it.
I thought it was the best mix. I want to say this real quick. I thought it was the best mix of utilizing 2 different defenses that we had seen before, and that's when people drop a lot of people into coverage, oftentimes quarters, or maybe they'll play cover 3, but they oftentimes do that as opposed to where you can play Tennessee in a different way, and that's to load the box, and you have potential for giving up downfield plays. But I thought that Ohio State did the best job of going back and forth between those 2 different philosophies because you don't want to be the same the whole game. I thought he did the best job of any coach that Tennessee has faced of going back and forth in defensive philosophy.
Yeah, and I forget what his name is. John Adams was talking to us about this earlier in the week, but he said he might be is it Jim Knowles? Is that his name? The best defensive coordinator in college football. And he looked like it on Saturday. And as we know, I mean, Ohio State's loss to Michigan was not his fault. The only thing I'll say is I think that there were some issues when it comes to coaching with, and we have to point this out, there have been issues with talent evaluation, and it kind of really showed up on the field in this game. I mean, we're going to have to point this out, but receivers got absolutely no separation the entire game. And at some point, I mean, these were all highly touted, highly recruited receivers. When are we going to – and we've talked about the offensive line, not the interior, not their fault. The tackles had issues again. They opened up the checkbook for John Campbell and Lance Hurd. Both gave up a sack at different times. Lance Hurd gave up a sack because let's be fair, Lance Hurd missed a block on a blitz. He blocked the wrong guy. John Campbell just got straight up beat by Jack Sawyer, which shouldn't happen given how much more athletic he is than Jack Sawyer.
No,
so, yeah.
What is our poll question now? What does that stand at?
Tennessee season was a massive success, failure.
Okay, so what do you pick out of that?
I mean, I'm sorry, guys, but it was a failure. I had Tennessee winning the national title. I had all my money on Nico Iamaleava winning the Heisman. I said that Nico was created in a lab to run Josh Heupel's offense. And honestly, to be fair to Nico, this game wasn't his fault. Don't put any of this on Nico. He played like a warrior in this game. Had literally no help anywhere else. But I
felt like this was the game that the offense hadn't come along to him. Does that make sense? Like he wasn't ready for the progression of the offense, like maybe in September with the Arkansas and Oklahoma games. They have dialed things down. I felt like this was the first time that he was beyond it.
Yeah, no, I agree. He was much further along than the rest of the offense. And he had
it was the first time they didn't put more on him than maybe he could handle. And I think he prefers it like that. I think he prefers to go into a test a little over-prepared.
If you don't count the last drive, which was a meaningless drive, Nico led the team in rushing, interestingly enough. And I mean, that was which, when we get to our takeaways, we'll break that down. But there were a lot of issues with, we can point this out too, offensively, play calling. I said, remember what I said early? I know Ohio State jumped out to an early lead, Dave, but I said the whole time all week, Tennessee's got to stick to the run game. They just chucked it. They just totally abandoned the run game.
They did.
And I thought that was bad.
No, I mean, you've got, I think Nico is 0 for 9 in the first quarter. And that's, if you hand that ball to running back, you're probably getting 25 yards if you hand it to him 5 times. Okay, what was the ultimate turning point before we get to blame Pie?
So for me, the turning point, there's 2 turning points. And they come down to 2 things. The first was the very first drive. And it was Tennessee thought they had a stop. The fans are ready to get into it. You think Ohio State's reeling. And there's the face mask penalty. It was a good call. People complained about it for a minute. The face mask on Bryson Eason. Guys, that was a really, really good call. I mean, there was nothing wrong with the officials on that. That was the right call. That was a dumb face mask by Bryson Eason right there. Ohio State turns that into a touchdown drive, and the onslaught begins. But honestly, Tennessee fights back in the second quarter. They get the ball to start the second half. They're down 21-10. And Dave, let's be honest. It was 21-0. It's 21-10 to go into halftime. They get the ball to start in the second half. They get a first down. I'm thinking Tennessee's, knowing Josh Heupel's history of opening drives in the second half and drives to close out first halves, that he's probably going to score here and cut it to a 1-score game. And Tennessee isn't able to do anything, and they have to punt it. And Ohio State scores to go 28-10. I think you and I both were. I thought at that moment, like, this game's over. You can't. You're fighting back and you let Ohio State score right there. It's over. They were out of Tennessee's league already. Tennessee had to do a lot. There was going to have to be a lot of things Tennessee had to do to make this a close game. And once that happened, that wasn't going to happen. That wasn't going to be the case. I'm going to defend this. I'm going to criticize play calling, but that speed option play, though, on that 3rd and 7 on that drive that got stalled, for those who are mad about that, if you actually look at it, if the receiver makes the block on the outside, which I didn't see which receiver it was, but if he makes that block, that's a first down. That's a touchdown, maybe, if that block is made.
No, I got no argument with that. All right, so turning point to me, I'm not exactly sure when it was, but my turning point would have been this: whenever Dylan Sampson walked off the field in the first quarter. I didn't see it. I didn't see the injury. They do a good job of hiding that nowadays, but he walked off. And I think he's a guy that players play hard for. Not to say they don't play hard for other people, but I just I think that really hurt Tennessee early.
Yes, it did. He went down to the first drive, actually. And that was it. Yeah, I think Dylan Sampson. I think you're right. I think Dylan Sampson going down totally. It changed everything with this offense. It changed the game plan. It changed why they wouldn't stick to the run game. And I think it kind of demoralized the team to a certain degree. But, again, we're going to point this out. Tennessee's interior offensive line didn't have trouble blocking in this game. They didn't have a chance. They weren't given the chance to really take over the game the way they should have done. No. So, but I'm with you on the turning point on that. That's a big turning point. I guess we could say that's the major one for Tennessee. Dylan Sampson going down.
Okay, so then we want to get to the blame pie. So Tennessee's biggest.
Can we do 5 takeaways first? Just the 5 takeaways.
Let's do takeaways right now.
All right, 5 takeaways from Tennessee's loss to Ohio State. Let's start with, and I want to know your thoughts. I think Ohio State's offense cashed in with misdirection plays all night. Chip Kelly did his research and his homework on Tennessee's defense. And the misdirection counter plays and passing plays, they had Tennessee's linebackers and safeties confused all night, didn't they?
Yep, certainly did, which is not a surprise. I will say this. You go back and look at the season, and I wrote this last week. If Keenan Pili is a part of this team, I don't think they have the lapses they have the defensive front. And I'm not so sure that they're not in this game, in the Ohio State game. I think he was that big of a player. I think maybe sometimes I've waxed poetic a little bit too much about him. You looked at me like I was kind of crazy, so feel free to jump in there. But I think he was that big of a deal for Tennessee. All right, so other takeaways?
Yep. All right, so takeaway number 2 is Tennessee's pass protection reverted back to its old ways. I don't know how you feel about, but like John Campbell Jr. and Lance Hurd, they're just not good, guys. We're just going to have to say that. In big matchups, they come up short. And you can say they were going up against tough competition, but this is what you play for Tennessee is to go up against tough competition. Darnell Wright went up against tough competition, and Will Anderson, guess what? He won that matchup consistently.
Last look brought to you by Doctors Campbell, Cunningham, Taylor, and Hahn. More as we wrap up the season and Tennessee losing to Ohio State in the shoe.
The first step to better vision is to visit ccteyes.com. The information you need is easy to access, and setting an appointment is as simple as clicking the tab. Doctors Campbell, Cunningham, Taylor, and Hahn, and Eye Care Optical at CCT.
What were our other takeaways, Caleb?
All right, so takeaway number 3 of 5, injuries wrecked the Tennessee offense. I mean, we talked about the main one, the key one, Dylan Sampson going down. He's the Vols' best offensive weapon. He went down on the first drive and didn't return until the third quarter. But, Squirrel White and Dante Thornton both left late in the first half, which was brutal. Deshaun Bishop actually got hurt at the start of the second half, and he's a key part of the running game. And Javonte Spraggins went out early in the third quarter. I mean, look, we talked about this, but Tennessee's not as deep as Ohio State. If Ohio State loses all these guys, they still have weapons they can plug in. But Tennessee's not a factory for guys that they can just throw in with injuries right now.
So Tennessee's biggest piece of blame pie goes to coaching or players. That's our poll question now. And as we continue with the blame pie, who else did you have that you want to get in there?
Yeah, 2 more takeaways I wanted to address.
Oh, takeaways. I'm sorry.
No, it's fine. So after that, I'll say this: Nico Iamaleava was the only offense. I mean, his stat line was very mediocre. 14 to 31 for 104 yards, 20 carries for like 47 yards. But I mean, Dave, he was a warrior. I got to give it to him. And he had nothing working for him, and he showed more moxie in this game than I've seen from him his whole career at Tennessee.
Yep, I got a takeaway for you. How about the linemen going out there without shirts on? How bad A was that?
It was epic. And the linemen and Cooper Mays led the way, and Cooper Mays was not at fault for what happened in this game at all, if you watched him play. And so
he wasn't.
Yeah.
No, I thought that was there had to be at least 2 or 3 players that are like, oh man, are we really gonna do this?
No, I know, right? And my last takeaway is you talk about the players. I'm giving the fans credit. Say whatever else you want about Tennessee, Dave. The fans did their part for Tennessee, and we could probably address this a little more in depth on Monday, but what are your thoughts on the idea that even though Tennessee laid an egg and looked embarrassed out there, I think the way the fans showed up at Columbus is going to help them in recruiting long term. I think it's still worth it.
Oh, I do too. I think it's a win all in all. I think the season is a win. I know that doesn't sound like what you want to hear right after a loss that eliminates you from the playoffs, but it is. Last look brought to you by Doctors Campbell, Cunningham, Taylor, and Hahn.
The first step to better vision is to visit ccteyes.com. The information you need is easy to access, and setting an appointment is as simple as clicking the tab. Doctors Campbell, Cunningham, Taylor, and Hahn, and Eye Care Optical at CCTI.
Caleb, let's get to your report card. If I agree, I'll give you one of these, which is Paris Hilton. We love her. And if Peyton Manning has his thoughts, it'll be.
Your board is off. I think you're using the wrong mic.
Oh, I'm not. But you can't hear anything?
Can't hear the board. Nope. Sorry.
Okay. Well, it's not going to happen today because we had a power surge.
Well, so Dave, can you do your pick? Why don't you do the Paris Hilton voice yourself?
That's hot. I did do the best I could. I can't believe you can't hear that. We'll have to work on that before tomorrow. That's very frustrating. I hate power surges. Go ahead.
All right. So my report card, I want to start with quarterback play, and Nico Iamaleava gets a B+, the best grade of anybody in this game on offensive defense. Am I overselling Nico Iamaleava by giving him a B+, given what he was working with?
I think he only threw for 94 yards, didn't he?
104.
Okay.
He crossed
I'd probably have a B-.
But he was fighting his guts out in this game with no help.
I agree.
No help.
Good old 8-ball.
Yes.
Nothing gets you going like 8-ball.
Oh, isn't that the truth? Running backs, I'm going to go C. I don't think they played particularly well, but I just don't think they got enough touches, honestly.
I got no problem with that. C's kind of my incomplete grade sometimes when guys just don't get enough touches or like special teams don't do anything. Sometimes it's just incomplete. All right, who's next?
Wide receivers are enough. Literally no separation all night. It was the worst. I've never seen them so bad at getting separation.
I'm going to go ahead and tell you they're a D for the season. As good as they were and all the hubbub that went into them, I can explain to you why John Campbell and Lance Hurd weren't good because they both had ankle issues coming into the season. I can't explain to you why all these receivers weren't good. Now, we can talk about Dante with the leg at one point. We can talk about Brood, McCoy, and Squirrel with the shoulder. But I said it at the time, so this isn't hindsight 2020, Caleb. I said sit Squirrel for 4 weeks until he's 100% healthy and he can come back. But they didn't do that.
You did.
And they just kept kind of
point.
Stringing him along, and I didn't understand how they managed that roster. That was bizarre to me. All right, report card. Who else, Caleb?
All right, tight ends. I'm going to go D. It was an incomplete, but to a negative degree because I don't think they were able to get open either in the passing game in this game. So not as bad as receivers, but they were a D on the night.
Okay. What else?
And the last on the team, and y'all might disagree with me on this. I'm going to go C- for the offensive line. Again, it's the same story all year. The tackles were horrendous, but the interior line wasn't that bad, and it wasn't their fault.
Can't argue with that. Anybody else? Special teams coaching?
Got to go to defense. Defensive line gets a C-. Linebackers, linebackers get enough. They were horrible.
Yeah.
They were absolutely atrocious. And then defensive backs get an F too. And I have to ask you this: did Jermon McCoy get exposed tonight, or was that just lack of help?
I thought he got beat. Now everybody's going to get beat. Even Deion Sanders got beat. But I think he got beat on the first play, and then when the whole thing started spiraling south, he got down on himself. Which that would be something if I'm an NFL scout, I make a note of. Has a tendency to get his dauber down, so to speak. But it wouldn't be something that would hurt me in drafting him. Like I wouldn't take him from a first rounder to a third rounder based off tonight, if that's what you're asking.
Yeah, okay. I see what you're saying. I mean, it could be just a minor thing, and maybe coaching could come in and help with that too.
Yeah, there's some coaches that really read into that attitude stuff though, and they don't want anything like that around. So what do we have left? Torchbearers, correct?
Well, we got to get wait. Let's go through special teams, and then got to do blame pie too.
Special teams and blame pie. Go ahead and give me your nominations for the Torchbearers, so I can put them on our message board so people can vote.
Nico, Will Brooks, James Pierce, Cooper Mays.
Okay, got it. All right. Torchbearer is all right. Now you give me your blame pie.
Well, let me finish with report card first.
Right.
Report card. Kickers are A+. Max Gilbert was perfect. Kickoffs were perfect. It just didn't matter at all. Punting was C-, honestly. I don't think Jackson Ross, he shanked a punt horribly and then had another one go for a touchback. Return game B. Peyton Lewis had one return for 24 yards. But we're going to go to coaching before we go to blame pie about coaching. And this is going to lead to our next one, Dave. I just want to know your thoughts. Coaching's an F to me. Coaching was horrible.
No, I think they got outcoached. I think they got more outcoached than outplayed. So I've got Torchbearer is Nico, Cooper Mays, and who else did you give me?
Will Brooks and James Pierce. So Before we get to Torchbearers, though, yeah, I'll start with Blame Pie.
And go ahead and vote for that if they would like to.
Yep. All right, so Blame Pie. 40%, and you can tell me if I should do higher than this. You know what? I'm changing it. Yeah, I'm going to go 50%. 50%. Half the Blame Pie just goes to the coordinators, Tim Banks and Joey Halsley.
I don't have a problem with that. But with Joey Halsley, you've got to include Josh Heupel to some extent.
You do. You're right. Okay. How about just, the play callers, if you want to say that. For Tim Banks, Chip Kelly just out-coached circles around Tim Banks in this game, and I like Tim Banks, but...
Can I ask you a question? We mentioned this earlier, how it's kind of bad that they went out there without their shirts on and stuff. But by the same token, I don't believe you do anything in a big game. Like if we were to have some show one day that was on the Friday before the Super Bowl, live from the Super Bowl site, I wouldn't say that we should do everything different on our show. No. I think you go about it the same way. So I'm curious how you would weigh that in your approach to the game. I mean, by not wearing those shirts, did that make them get out of their normal routine, make it a little goofy, perhaps?
I mean, I think you're absolutely right. I think that makes the most sense. It reminds me of a few years ago when the Titans played the Packers. The Titans went up to Green Bay, and this is when the Titans actually had a good team, not the team they have now. Taylor Lewan walked out. It was snowing, and Taylor Lewan walked out in a hoodie and shorts and barefoot through the snow, just to show off, and the Packers dominated. So yeah, and by the way, that also falls on coaching. Coaches should be like, no, we're doing everything the same, guys. Everything is exactly the same. We're not here to make a statement. So again, with Blame Pie, I mean, maybe I'll go from coordinators to play callers to coaching, but the blame pie for Tennessee's loss at Ohio State, half of it just goes to the coaches.
Got no problem with that. All right, what else we got, Caleb?
All right, so rest of the Blame Pie, 20% goes to receivers. That includes wide receivers and tight ends, but 20% receivers. Is that fair?
Okay. Yes.
And 10% linebackers. Is that a fair one?
You want to give them more, but I understand with what you're doing with the coordinators, you kind of can't.
Yeah,
so
got to split the pie. Yeah, exactly. And 10% cornerbacks. I mean, Jerome McCoy and Ricky Gibson just got worked in this game. They got
especially in the first quarter when that led to the 21-0 lead, when that led to Tennessee not being able to lead on its running game, and that was kind of the way things spiraled out of control. What else for us, Caleb?
And last, before we get to the Torchbearers, is offensive tackles. They get 10% too because they each gave up a sack and they played terribly.
Yep. The show, The Last Look, brought to you by Drs. Campbell, Cunningham, Taylor, and Hahn. Let's take a look at those Torchbearers. Enjoy life better when you see better. What are our Torchbearers vote there, Caleb?
So Torchbearers from Tennessee's win over Ohio State, and I'm going to count them down. These players, they don't deserve any. Nobody really was great in this game, but these players just don't deserve blame for what happened. How about that? Number 5 is Cooper Mays. Cooper Mays, I thought, blocked very well on the interior. Jamonte Spraggins went out, and so I think Cooper Mays just didn't get the chance to show off what he could do, but he still was very good for Tennessee in this game, honestly.
Agreed.
Number 4, James Pierce Jr. had 2 tackles for a loss in the game. I noticed I really haven't talked about the defensive line. I don't think they were bad. I don't think they were good. I just think they were kind of there, but I think James Pierce Jr. did actually make some plays.
He really had a key tackle on about a 3rd and 2 from the backside that the guy would have picked it up and gotten the first down if he hadn't made the tackle. It was a really nice play. I'm not sure if it was a TFL or not, but it was a really nice play right at the line. All right, what's next?
Number 3, Deshaun Bishop. I thought Deshaun Bishop ran hard, ran well. He was forced into a bad situation with Dylan Sampson out, and I don't know if that's debatable, but I think Deshaun Bishop was. I think he ran. I know Peyton Lewis had more yards on that final meaningless drive, but I thought Deshaun Bishop ran hard. By the way, I do have to say this, and I got to ask, why did they not go to Peyton Lewis and just give him the ball more with Dylan Sampson? I thought Peyton Lewis was supposed to be a highly touted back in their future.
To me, he doesn't look confident yet. It doesn't look like he's letting it rip. Now, that could be a number of different reasons. That could be that they don't have him prepared in the plays that they're running. That could be mean that he's still young and he's just not ready. But I don't think he looks like he's letting it rip yet to you. Does he look like he's going full bore to you?
No, not really. He seems like he's hesitating more. Maybe his vision's the issue. So,
well, I don't want to question his physical traits before I would just question uncertainty. Uncertainty can make you look like you're not playing with great effort.
Yeah,
and,
I totally agree.
So, like, if we're having this discussion in October of next year, then it's more than just uncertainty. All right, what else for us? Caleb Calhoun?
All right, number 2, the second best player of the game, the gym rat himself, Will Brooks. That
4
was an epic.
interceptions for him on the year.
I think so, and that interception was epic. Now, okay, look, to be fair, he got juked the heck out of on a play where Travion Henderson had a touchdown run where he fell over.
I'm also not sure that was an interception. I'm not sure his foot was down, but anyway.
Yeah, but also the play where he got juked out of, he shouldn't have been forced into a one-on-one situation with Travion Henderson. That's not his job. If you're in a situation where Will Brooks is one-on-one having to tackle a running back like Travion Henderson, somebody else messed up.
Yes. Will with 3 interceptions this season, 54 tackles total. He had 3 tackles for a loss. He had, I mentioned the 3 interceptions, forced a fumble, also had a sack. When all's said and done, we kind of poke fun at Will Brooks. You know, is he going to be the black hole at safety because of what he looks like? Is he going to be the issue at safety? And it hasn't been. He's been fantastic and very timely. And I think he's been sound too. And we can point to the interceptions, one against Ohio State, but I think he's been sound. I don't think he's gotten beat downfield because he's gambled too much in the run. No,
he hasn't. And I mean, that's again, we're filling a stereotype again. He's been sound. He hasn't gotten beat downfield. He's been fundamental. Exactly. And your job is, as a defensive coordinator and as the rest of the defense, you're not supposed to put him in a position where he's one-on-one having to tackle a running back. He still made the interception. And I mean, he gets a torchbearer because whether or not you think it was a spectacular effort, and it was ruled an interception. So he gets the credit for it.
Absolutely. What else for us, Caleb? Does that got us for our torchbearers?
Our lead torchbearer, and I don't even think it's a question, is Nico Iamaleava. Bad game stat-wise, but Nico Iamaleava literally tried to put this team on his back and carry them, and did it with very, very little help, honestly.
Shows that he believes. He does. And I think that he had some doubt in September from people I talked to because things weren't going as easily as he thought they would. But he's continued to fight hard, and I think he's going to go into this offseason with a ton of doubts. How bizarre is it to have a good season and your season's over December 22nd? Do they get to have bowl practice or something? Or do they get to do anything? Or they just
I haven't even thought about that. Like, they had some players practicing with them for the playoff. That's some stuff that we're going to have to
I can go ahead and tell you Philip Fulmer would have set up some sort of camping expedition to make sure that the players didn't have an extra week to get in trouble.
Maybe the NCAA should do that. Like, just say, like, you're allowed to have practices right after the season because if you go to the playoff, that needs to be a thing. Because otherwise, you're right. This is so bizarre.
Yeah, you're going to have Georgia players driving around 120 miles an hour on the roads. He's Caleb Calhoun. I'm Dave Hooker. The show represented by Banks & Jones, Tennessee's trial attorney, banksandjones.com. But our postgame show, The Last Look, brought to you by Doctors Campbell, Cunningham, Taylor, and Hahn. Look at me, LASIK, no contacts, no glasses. I love it. Doctors Campbell, Cunningham, Taylor, and Hahn. This is a presentation of Off the Hook Sports.